In the Danish welfare state, the children's upbringing is not only the parents' task, but also a concern for the society and the state. Daycare is no longer just seen as some sort of babysitting opportunity, but seen as a necessity for learning and personal development, for not to mention a tool for better integration. When a child is born, one of the parents can take up to a year on maternity leave, which means that they can spend a year at home taking care of the newborn. In Denmark, 96.5% of the children in the age between 3 and 6 years old is in kindergarten, most of them for more than 30 hours a week. A lot of the children have been there since they were 3 years old, even though it can cost more than 3,000 Danish crowns a month. The Danish children have something close to a world record in the institution. In kindergarten, the children learn to be among others and learn how to socially function. The Danish schools are free. When you are turning 6 years old, it's a recommend that the child will start in a preschool. The next 9 years, the Danish children will be spending in school. That's a total of 6,916 hours on the school bench. After 9 grades comes graduation, and the individual now has to decide which education he or she wants to pursue. Some wants to be a craftsman, and many of the Danish children wants to continue to a higher education. The purpose with school is to prepare the individual for higher education and create an independent person. When you are in the age between 15 and 18 years old, you would have attended your higher education. The purpose with this education is to give the individual the resources to handle the life in a globalized society. All in all, the Danish children have a lot of freedom and can decide by themselves which way they want to go in life.
Okay. The residential forms in Denmark. The Danes prefer single family houses. Up to 40% of the Danes live in a single family house. In these houses there only live one family, for example a mom, a dad and one child, and maybe pets. The houses is placed in a neighborhood where everybody can live in peace. In 2001, some studies tell us about where the Danes wanted to live. 72% under 50 years old and are in a relationship wanted to live in an owner-occupied house, while the elderly and the single people prefers to rent a house or an apartment. The single family house is the best residential forms to raise a family because of the location and the peaceful area.
The divorce rate in Denmark is among the highest in the world. Around 30,000 Danes get married each year, and half of them, 15,000, will eventually end a divorce. Statistics shows that in 2008 did 14,619 couples get divorced. In 2012, the number of divorces had raised to 15,709. Of these divorces, does about 10,000 of them for both years contain couples with children. Danish experts agree that the reason that the divorce rate is so high has to do with our society. In Denmark, there's a huge focus on our individual rights, wishes and expectations, and thus marriage not fit in with these demands, you can easily get divorced. It's also quite common to get married again, and it is socially accepted. Therefore, a lot of children lives with a stepmom or dad.
2,800 kroners is the average annual income for a Dane in 2008. The average income for men is significantly higher at 319,000 per year. This corresponds to an increase of 0.3% compared to the year before 2007. The women had an average annual income of 239,000 Danish crowns in 2008, and it was an increase of 3.4% compared to 2007. It is normal in Denmark that both men and women go to work. The marked difference is that men and women's income due to the fact that men have an average longer hours than women. In addition, there are more female elderly because women live longer than men. This means that their income will count too, and it is very low, and therefore men are very high compared to women. In this graph you can see the income of men and women at their current age. For example, 25 to 29, the average income for men is 200,000 and the average income for women is 104.
In the past, the division of labor was absolute. Women ruled the house and men ruled the labor market. However, in the 1960s, this picture began to change. Women entered the labor market and the traditional male breadwinner model changed into a dual earner model. This evolution was distinctive in Denmark in 1996, where only 1% of women were full-time housewives. Men and women in Denmark work the same numbers of hours every week, and Denmark is among the countries having most women enter the labor market and where men take an active part in housework and childcare. However, women perform more hours of unpaid housework, where men partake in more paid labor. This pattern is more normal among families with children, since before having children, the division of labor is more even between the sexes. It is possible that men and women simply have different preferences. Women may prefer to have a caring role, while men prefer to act as the provider. In that scenario, gender inequality could stem from individual choices in relation to these preferences. Another possibility is that these preferences are a product of surroundings expectations, since society is still marked by gender stereotypes. The division of labor at home affects the division of labor at work and the other way around. This makes it more difficult to break down the traditional structures. The remarkable fact is that most Danish women see this division as their choice, not as an equality issue. As shown, women do the greater part of the work at home, and therefore it would be expected that they would be less satisfied with the division of labor. Nevertheless, on a scale from 1, which is very dissatisfied, to 6, which is very satisfied, the average for women is 5.17 and for men 5.23. The difference between the sexes is minimal in this regard, and the results show a high level of satisfaction with the division of labor in the family. In general, both men and women are very satisfied, although women working more than 27 hours a week tend to be less satisfied, and this is not the case for men.